Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. I wanted to go over with you today how I paint skin tones. Now I know that a lot of people have issues with this, so I thought I'd make a little quick tutorial for you guys. I like to start off with a really good base. My colors that I like to use are burnt sienna, yellow ochre, white, some alizarin crimson, and maybe some burnt umber. I'll also throw in there some yellow ochre. I like to use earth palette colors. So maybe some burnt sienna, like I said, yellow ochre, especially if they have that yellow undertone to their skin. Ivory black. To glaze, I like to use my translucent colors. So of course you have your alizarin crimson. You have, you can also use yellow ochre because it is translucent. And then ultramarine blue is really good to glaze over any type of shadow areas. So I wanted to show you guys how I mix today to get the colors that I want. Now I have some reference photos here that I'm using for the painting behind me, and I'm going to show those to you. You see first here you have two different photos because I have a mother and a child. And you can see these photos, they were taken a long time ago. I'm guessing probably 70s, 80s, and the color's not great. You know, cameras back then, they weren't the best. And so I've tried to manipulate these a little bit. I've zoomed in, it's very pixelated. So luckily I was blessed enough to have more reference photos from my client. I would suggest if you can, get as many reference photos, or at least like 7 to 10 reference photos, so you can see different angles and profiles, different lighting conditions to get a true sense of what the subject is that you're painting, especially if you're painting portraits. I got lucky and they sent me a few more, and these two I found were the best ones to really get an idea of their skin tone. And you see they have this beautiful brown complexion with yellow undertones. I see a little bit of red in there. So I wanted to show you how I accomplished this skin tone in this video. I hope that you enjoy it, and if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. So let's just go ahead and get started. Let me show you how I mix these colors. Okay guys, so let's talk about what we have on our palette here. This is what I like to start with. I have some burnt sienna, I have some burnt umber, some alizarin crimson, and some white. Now I'll use this as my base color, and then as I need to, I will add some yellow ochre and some ultramarine blue. So let's go ahead and get started. Now I am doing a Caucasian skin tone, so I will be using quite a bit of white, but I just wanted to show you guys how I go about this process. So skin tones, I always like to start with some burnt umber. Okay, this is the same color that I use for all my underpaintings, and then I'm going to throw in just a little bit of the alizarin and then a little bit of white. So I'm going to go ahead and start to mix this up. And you see we're getting way too much pink here. I don't know if you can see that, if it's going to show up in the camera or not. So I'm going to add some more white. Now when you're doing Caucasian skin tones, you're going to use quite a bit of white like I was talking about there. And it's just really a matter of going back and forth. Have your reference photo handy so you can compare the skin tones for yourself, just to get an idea of, you know, what's working and what's not working. So I'm going to throw in now a little bit of the ultramarine blue, because I noticed here that it's just, it needs to be dyed down a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. And the good thing, the reason why I'm going across the palette is because later on I may find these colors that I see that I just really, really love. So I like to have a wide variety of colors here. So now I'm going to go a little bit into the burnt sienna, and let's just kind of see what we got going on here. Burnt sienna kind of has this orangey color to it. So I really like that color. So I'm going to go ahead and throw that in there. You see, we're very purple right now, and we don't want that. So I think that what we're going to need is some white. Like I said, we're going to be using a lot of white, but as you see, the more white that I use, let me scrape this up so I can get it mixed up really well. It's going to start to develop that skin color that I want. Now right now, we're working with kind of a dark purpley color, browny purple. So let's just keep adding in those colors, figuring out what's missing here. And every skin color is different, so you're gonna have to figure out what is best for you and what works for the client that you're working with. Now putting in those yellow tones, that really helped. And see, I'm keeping this right here because that's a good base, and you're gonna use that base to add on to. You can see here we're starting to get more of those brownie tones since I added in that yellow ochre. Now it's actually starting to look more flesh-like. Now the one thing that I like to do is once I get a color that I'm really happy with, which is going to be more of a mid-tone, it's not going to be my lightest color, it's not going to be my darkest color, then I'm going to work on that by adding as my base, and I'm either going to go up a value or down a value to get those different varieties for shadows. So you see here, that's a pretty nice color. Let me put it up on the palette, put it up on my skin tone. Let's see so you can see that. But it's still off, right? It's still, you know, kind of purple. Still got quite a bit of purplish color in there. And I need more white. Like I said, you're gonna be using a lot of white if you're doing a Caucasian. Let's mix that in here. Just mix it in a little bit at a time. Now you're going to be using more white than you are any other color. So you see there, we're getting a little bit closer. Let's see if I can get that in the camera and get it to focus. Now that's a very pinky flesh tone. I think that this color would probably be pretty good for highlights. So I'm going to try to take this and dial it back a little bit. A little bit of this burnt umber. I think I'm going to go with burnt umber because she does have these beautiful, both of them do, mother and daughter, have this beautiful brown tone to their skin. So let's go ahead and try by mixing in a little bit of this brown and see what happens here. And like I said, I do try to move around my palette just so when I'm painting, I may come across, because I'm using all the same colors here and they're all in the same spectrum. So I'm going to be using this probably for a highlight. I can use this maybe a little bit for the shadows. This may be used for a little bit of the shadows. This is more of my mid-tone that I was aiming for. I like to compare it to my skin tone. I'm going to add a little bit more of the burnt umber, bring it over this way, take a little bit of what I'm working with there, just to add it a little bit darker. Now sometimes I'll think that these colors look perfect, and then I'll put them on the canvas and I'll be like, oh my goodness, that doesn't look anything like what I thought it was going to look like. So it is really just trial and error, but these are the base colors, and it's really important that you learn how to mix your colors. What's missing, what seems to kind of be lacking with what you're working with. So here I have a beautiful brown, which we definitely see, a little bit of a lighter brown with a reddish tint, and then this is more of those pink colors that we're seeing. And then these would be great shadow colors. Now, I don't like to go too dark with those first layers that I'm blocking in. I save that for the glazing process. And for my glazing, I almost use ultramarine blue and alizarin crimson. So I like to glaze those over after this has some time to dry, because I use Liquid Original and it takes about a day for it to dry, and then I can go in the next day and I can glaze those over. If I feel like it's not the best, then I can just wipe it off. That's the great thing about glazing and giving it time to kind of set up with using that quick dry Liquid Original. I have 5 colors here. I'm probably going to mix until I get about 7 to 8 different tones. So, and what I'll do is I'll just keep going a little bit darker. So I'm going to put this here, and then this time I'm going to use a little bit ultramarine blue and burnt umber Be very, very sparing with this. Just a little bit will go a long way, because when you mix these together, I substitute this for a black. There we go. See how that really grayed that down? That would be a great shadow color. Now it is lacking a little bit, so I think I'm going to put a little bit of the alizarin in there, just a tiny, tiny bit, just to give it a little bit more of those red tones that you kind of see in the shadow areas. And remember, when this is basic color mixing, red and blue are going to make purple, so just keep that in mind. But like I said, I love to have purples and blues in for my shadow color, so for me this is perfect. And as you see, it kind of has, I hope that's picking up, but it has like a purplish grayish tone to it. That's exactly what I'm looking for. Now, to go on the lighter end, I'm going to keep adding white to it. That's all I need to do, and it's going to get those, really nice highlighted areas. Quite a bit of white here, as you can see. A nice little pea-size amount. I put the white here beside of it, and I'm going to slowly mix that in and get a really nice gradient color here. For those highlights, you never want to go with white until the very, very end of your painting. So I am having some of that other color in here. And it's almost like a really, just slightly off-white. But it's not completely white. You want to save those for your final details. So here I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different paints to work with, and then I'll go through and I'll add, but I'll keep in mind that my glazing stages have not started yet. But for the glazing, like I said, I use the ultramarine blue and permanent alizarin crimson. I hope you guys found this video helpful. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments below. I'll list all the colors that I used down in the description, and I'll see you guys in the next video.